"You're too small for my big plans, Mark," Laura said casually, like she was commenting on the weather, her manicured fingers wrapped around a glass of Pinot Grigio that cost more than I used to spend on a bottle of whiskey. The words hung between us in our kitchen, the one I'd renovated myself 2 summers ago, while she scrolled through her phone, probably checking messages from him. That was last week. That was when I knew my 10-year marriage was over. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The truth is, the foundation had been cracking for months before those words finally brought the whole structure down. A year ago, Laura Jensen was my wife, mother of our 2 kids, and a part-time real estate agent who helped old ladies find starter homes. Then she got her big break, landed a listing for some tech executive's mansion, sold it for $2 million over asking, and suddenly she was somebody in the local real estate scene. I was happy for her. Hell, I was proud. My wife, the woman who used to clip coupons and plan our grocery trips around sales, was suddenly bringing in commissions that dwarfed my construction manager salary. I'd come home covered in drywall dust to find her in designer clothes I didn't recognize, talking about networking events and closing strategies. "You should come tonight," she'd say, adjusting an earring that cost more than my truck payment. "The Whitmore Group is hosting at the Meridian Club." But when I'd show up in my best khakis and polo shirt, she'd introduce me quickly, then drift away to talk to people who mattered. I'd stand by the bar, watching my wife transform into someone I didn't recognize, laughing too loud at jokes that weren't funny, touching arms, leaning in close to whisper market secrets. The weekend trip started in February. "Client wants to see properties in Napa," she'd explain, throwing clothes into a Louis Vuitton overnight bag that appeared one day without explanation. "Big commission if I land this one, baby." I'd stay home with Jake and Emma, taking them to soccer practice and birthday parties, while Laura posted Instagram stories from hotel rooftops I'd never seen. The kids stopped asking when Mommy would be home. The credit card statements told their own story. Nobu, the French Laundry, bars with names like Violet Hour and The Alchemist. Always 2 meals, always expensive wine. When I asked about the costs, she'd wave her hand dismissively. "Cost of doing business, Mark," she'd respond. "You have to spend money to make money." But it was the small changes that hurt most. The way she'd angle her body away from me in bed. How she started going to the gym at 5 a.m., coming back with her hair still perfectly styled. The new perfume, something French and complicated that replaced the vanilla body spray she'd worn since college. Last week, Thursday night, she'd left her phone face up on the dinner table while she went to check on Emma's homework. The screen lit up with a preview that changed everything. "Daniel Whitmore. Can't wait for this weekend. Same suite?" My throat went dry. Daniel Whitmore, the developer she'd been working with, the one whose name came up in every conversation about her success. Tall, silver-haired, drove a Porsche that he parked across 2 spaces. "Who's texting you?" I asked when she came back, keeping my voice steady the way I did when dealing with difficult subcontractors. She glanced at the phone, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Panic, maybe, or annoyance at being questioned. Then the mask slipped back on. "Just Daniel about the Riverside development," she replied, sliding the phone into her pocket. "We're doing a final walkthrough Saturday for the Hong Kong investors." "In the same suite?" I pressed. She looked at me with those green eyes that used to see me as her whole world. Now they were calculating, measuring whether I was a threat to whatever she was building without me. "Conference suite at the Marriott downtown," she answered smoothly, "where we always meet clients." That night, I lay awake next to her, listening to her breathe, and realized I didn't know when she'd become such a good liar. Or maybe I just hadn't wanted to see it. The woman beside me, with her new confidence and designer clothes and weekend trips, wasn't the Laura I'd married in a backyard ceremony 10 years ago. She'd grown into someone with big plans, and apparently, I was too small to be part of them. I started paying attention after that Thursday night. Really paying attention. Not just the passive awareness of a trusting husband, but the focused observation of someone who's finally admitted what he's been avoiding. Laura didn't notice the shift. She was too busy becoming whoever she thought she needed to be. The investigation started small. I'd note when she said she was going to the office, but her location services showed her at the Meridian Club. I'd screenshot her Instagram stories, grinding at the office. When our credit card was being charged at a downtown wine bar, I became a detective in my own home, and the evidence was everywhere once I started looking. But technology was what really exposed her. Laura had always been careless with passwords, used the same one for everything, our anniversary date. She'd also never bothered to turn off the automatic backup feature on her phone that synced to our shared laptop. Why would she? I barely used the computer except to check baseball scores and pay bills. Tuesday night, Laura was at another networking dinner. The kids were asleep. I sat at our dining room table with the laptop and a beer, telling myself I was just going to check our bank statements. That's what I told myself as I opened the photos folder. That's what I told myself as I clicked on her recent backups. The photos loaded in a grid, newest first, Laura at showings, Laura with clients, Laura and her team. Then I hit April, and my beer went warm in my hand. Hotel room selfies. Laura in lingerie I'd never seen. Daniel Whitmore's silver hair and white teeth in frame after frame. The two of them at restaurants, at bars, in a Tesla I recognized from the company parking lot. But it was the casual intimacy that gutted me. Her hand on his chest, his arm around her waist, the way they looked at each other like they had a secret. They did have a secret. They just didn't know it wasn't one anymore. The text messages were worse than the photos. I sat there for 2 hours, reading the destruction of my marriage in blue and gray bubbles. Laura. God, I needed that. Mark would never think to book a suite at the Saint. Regis. Daniel. You deserve to be treated like the queen you are, not stuck in suburbia with someone who doesn't appreciate your potential. Laura. He's a good provider, stable, safe. Daniel. Safe is another word for boring, baby. Laura. I know. Trust me, I know. 10 years of safe. 10 years of the same conversations, the same Friday night pizza, the same positions. I had to stop reading, walk to the bathroom, splash cold water on my face. We'd made love that morning, or what I thought was making love. Apparently, it was just another obligation she was checking off her list. When I came back, I kept reading, screenshotting everything. Daniel. Leave him. Move in with me. We'll build an empire together. Laura. It's not that simple. There's the house, the kids, 10 years of assets. Daniel. I have lawyers who can handle that. You'd get half of everything, plus child support. Mark seems like the type who'd just roll over. Laura. He is. He's too small for my big plans. But I need to time this right. Maybe after the Riverside development closes. Too small for her big plans. There it was, in writing, dated 2 months ago. I copied everything, every photo, every message, every email about their business meetings that were clearly anything but. I uploaded it all to a cloud drive only I could access, then sent copies to a separate email account. Then I sat back and did something that surprised me. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because Laura had made such a fundamental miscalculation. She thought I was safe, boring, predictable Mark who'd roll over when she was ready to discard me. She thought I'd beg, cry, fight for a marriage she'd already murdered. She was wrong. The next morning, I made breakfast like always. Scrambled eggs for Jake, pancakes for Emma. Laura rushed through the kitchen in her gym clothes, pecked me on the cheek, when did that become such an empty gesture, and mentioned she had a showing that might run late. No problem, I replied, flipping another pancake. Take your time. She paused at the door, maybe hearing something different in my tone. But then her phone buzzed, probably Daniel, and she was gone. I dropped the kids at school, then sat in my truck in the parking lot and made a call to Richardson and Associates. the law firm that handled our company's contracts. "I need a divorce attorney," I told the receptionist. "The best you have." "Are you looking to file, or has your spouse already initiated proceedings?" she asked. I looked at my wedding ring, the simple gold band Laura had slipped on my finger when we were young and stupid and in love. "I'm looking to win," I answered. The appointment was set for Thursday. In the meantime, I had more evidence to gather, and Laura was going to help me do it without even knowing. Because while she was right that I'd been too small for her big plans, she'd forgotten something important about being in construction. Before you build something new, you have to know how to tear the old structure down properly. You have to understand the weight-bearing walls, the stress points, the hidden weaknesses. And I'd just found all of hers. Catherine Walsh didn't look like a private investigator. She looked like someone's grandmother, silver-haired and soft-spoken, wearing a cardigan with cats on it. That's probably why she was so good at her job. "I don't need you to prove my wife's having an affair," I told her in her cramped office above a Chinese restaurant. "I have all that evidence already." She adjusted her reading glasses, reviewing the flash drive I'd handed her. "Then what do you need, Mr. Jensen?" she asked. "I need documentation of how this affair is affecting our family," I explained. "Financial records showing her misuse of marital assets, evidence of parental neglect, things that matter in court, not just to my ego." Catherine smiled, and suddenly she didn't look so grandmotherly anymore. "You're thinking strategically." "Good," she replied. "Most men in your position just want to catch them in the act, like that changes anything legally. You want to win, not just wound." "I want my kids," I said. "I want my house. I want her to get exactly what she deserves, no more, no less." "That I can help with," she assured me. While Catherine built her case, I built mine. I became the perfect husband, ironically enough. When Laura forgot to pick up Jake from soccer practice, too busy with Daniel according to her text history, I let the coach call her 3 times before swooping in to save the day. I documented every instance, every forgotten obligation, every broken promise. "Working late again?" I'd ask when she'd stumble in at midnight, reeking of wine and his cologne. "Big client dinner," she'd respond, not even trying to make it convincing anymore. "You know how it is." "I do," I'd reply, and I meant it. I knew exactly how it was. Catherine's first report came 2 weeks later. Daniel Whitmore was quite the character. 3 divorces, 2 bankruptcies cleverly hidden behind shell companies, and a reputation for burning through business partners like cigarettes. He'd been sued twice for breach of contract and once for sexual harassment, though that had been settled quietly. "He's using your wife," Catherine said bluntly. "She's brought him 3 major listings through her connections. Once she's exhausted her network, he'll move on. It's his pattern." "How long?" I asked. "Based on his history?" 6 months from the start of the affair. You're already at month 3, she replied. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not jealousy. That had burned out weeks ago. This was satisfaction. Laura thought she was trading up, but she was really just another mark in Daniel's long con. The financial documentation was even more damning. Laura had been funneling money from our joint accounts into a separate one she thought I didn't know about. She'd been padding her expense reports, charging personal dinners as business meetings. Catherine had receipts, bank records, even surveillance footage of Laura and Daniel at an ATM laughing as they withdrew cash from our account for a Vegas weekend. But the parental neglect was what would matter most in court. Laura had missed 12 school events in 2 months. She'd forgotten Emma's birthday party planning meeting. She'd been late to parent-teacher conferences because she was at a hotel bar with Daniel. Catherine had the receipts and security footage. I kept playing my part. Supportive husband. Devoted father. The stable, boring, safe mark that Laura took for granted. When she finally asked for the divorce, I was ready. It was a Wednesday evening, 2 weeks after I'd discovered the affair. The kids were at my mother's. Laura had made dinner, first time in months, and I knew what was coming. "Mark, we need to talk," she began. I put down my fork, met her eyes. She'd practiced this speech. I could tell by how her hands weren't shaking. "We've grown apart," she continued. "We want different things now. I think we should consider a separation." 10 years of marriage reduced to corporate speak. We'd grown apart, like it was mutual, like I'd had any say in her transformation. "You're right," I said. She blinked, thrown off her script. What?" she stammered. "You're right. We should divorce," I confirmed. Laura's face cycled through emotions, surprise, suspicion, then relief. She'd expected tears, anger, begging. Instead, I was giving her exactly what she wanted, which made her nervous. "We can do this amicably," she said quickly. 50-50 split, shared custody, no need for ugly court battles." "Of course," I agreed. "Whatever you think is fair." She actually smiled then, reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "I knew you'd understand," she said. "You've always been so reasonable." Reasonable, safe, boring, small. "When are you thinking of filing?" I asked, cutting another piece of chicken. "Maybe next month?" "I need to get some things in order first," she replied. She meant she needed to hide more assets, probably move more money around. Catherine was already tracking all of it. "No rush," I said. "Take your time." Laura left that night to stay with her sister, but really went to Daniel's condo. Catherine had already confirmed he'd given her a key. She kissed my cheek on the way out, promised we'd always be friends, that she'd always care about me. As her car pulled away, I called my attorney. "File tomorrow," I instructed. "Everything we discussed." "Are you sure?" "Once we file, there's no going back," he warned. I thought about Laura in that hotel room, laughing about our marriage. I thought about her calling me small, safe, boring. I thought about Daniel Whitmore, who was about to discover that Laura came with more baggage than he'd bargained for. "File it," I said, "and make sure she's served at her office." The spider had finished spinning his web. Now it was time to wait for the fly to realize she was already caught. Monday morning came bright and clear, one of those perfect spring days that make you think everything's going to be all right. Laura left early for the office, humming to herself, probably thinking about her new life with Daniel. She kissed the kids goodbye, told them to be good for Daddy, and drove off in the BMW she'd leased without discussing it with me. The process server arrived at Whitmore Realty at 11:47 a.m. I know the exact time because Laura called me at 11:53, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I was at a job site, reviewing blueprints with my foreman, and I stepped outside to take the call. "What the hell did you do?" she shouted. She'd never sworn at me before, not in 12 years. "You said we'd do this amicably." "We are," I replied calmly. "I'm just getting things in order, like you said you needed to." "In front of my colleagues? In front of clients? You vindictive piece of—" she raged. "Laura," I kept my voice steady, professional. "Everything's in the filing. Your attorney can review it and we can discuss." "What filing? What did you—" I heard papers rustling, then silence. She was reading. The affair documentation, the financial fraud, the parental neglect, everything. "How?" Her voice came out small, strangled. "You backed up your phone to our laptop. You never were good with technology," I explained. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, "Mark, please. We can talk about this. I made a mistake." "Several mistakes," I corrected. "All documented. Your attorney has my attorney's contact information. We should probably communicate through them from now on." I hung up and went back to my blueprints. By that afternoon, Laura's carefully constructed world was collapsing. 2 major clients called to cancel their listings, uncomfortable with the drama. Her Instagram, usually full of staged perfectionism, went dark. Daniel, true to form, distanced himself immediately. Catherine sent me the screenshots of their text exchange. Laura: the divorce papers came today. Mark knows everything. Daniel: everything? Laura: about us, the hotels, everything. Daniel: I think we should take a break. This is a lot to process. Laura: a break? Danny: you said you loved me. You said we'd build an empire. Daniel: I need to focus on my business right now. The Riverside development is at a crucial stage. Laura: are you hecking kidding me? Daniel: don't contact me again. If you do, I'll consider it harassment. And just like that, Prince Charming revealed himself as another middle-aged narcissist who'd wanted some excitement without consequences. Laura had torched her marriage for a man who blocked her number the moment things got complicated. Tuesday, she came to the house while I was at work, probably hoping to grab valuables or important documents. But I'd changed the locks and installed cameras. I watched from my phone as she stood on the porch, our porch, the one I'd built, trying her key over and over, then finally sitting on the steps and crying. Wednesday, her lawyer called mine. They wanted to negotiate. Laura would admit to the affair if I'd agree to keep the financial fraud quiet. She'd give up custody if I'd let her keep her car and half the savings. Counteroffer, my attorney said. She gets the car, $5,000, and supervised visitation every other weekend. Otherwise, we go to trial with everything. Thursday, Daniel's wife called me. Yes, his wife. The one he'd been separated from but never actually divorced. The third, Mrs. Whitmore, who'd been trying to serve him papers for 2 years but could never prove adultery in a way that would break their prenup. I understand you have photos, she said. I might, I replied. I'll pay you for them, she offered. I don't want your money, I answered. But if you need them for your case, I'll send them for free. She actually laughed. You're destroying him for free? She asked. I'm not destroying anyone, I said. I'm just letting people face the consequences of their choices. Friday, Laura tried one more time. She showed up at Jake's soccer practice, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 days. Designer clothes replaced with jeans and a sweatshirt. Her BMW still in the parking lot, but looking somehow diminished, perfectly styled hair pulled back in a messy bun. Can we talk? She asked. I kept my eyes on Jake, who was practicing penalty kicks. Our lawyers are talking. Mark, please, I messed up. I know that. But 10 years? Doesn't that mean anything? She pleaded. It meant everything to me, I replied. But apparently, I was too small for your big plans. She flinched. I was drunk when I wrote that. I didn't mean... You meant it, and you were right. I am small. I have small dreams. A nice house, happy kids, a wife who loves me, Friday night pizza and mission and all of it. That's all I ever wanted, I said. I wanted more, she admitted. And how'd that work out? I asked. She started crying then, ugly sobs that drew looks from other parents. But I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. The woman crying next to me wasn't my wife. My wife had died somewhere between the first hotel room and the last text message. The final meeting was in my attorney's conference room. Laura looked defeated, her lawyer looked tired, and Daniel Whitmore was nowhere to be found, already moved on to his next conquest, according to Catherine. The terms were brutal, but fair. I kept the house, primary custody, and most of our savings. Laura got her car, her personal belongings, and enough money to start over. The business she'd built with Whitmore was already crumbling. Turned out a lot of those clients were more his than hers, and they followed him when he cut her loose. Is there anything else you'd like to say? The mediator asked. Laura looked at me across the table, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd married. Young, ambitious, full of dreams. But that woman had evolved into someone else, someone who'd mistaken wanting more for deserving more. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I said. And I was sorry too. Sorry that she'd destroyed our family for an illusion. Sorry that she'd traded something real for something shiny. Sorry that she'd learned too late that some things, once broken, can't be fixed. The papers were signed at 3:47 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Laura's hands shook as she wrote her name. Mine were steady. As we left the building, she turned to me one last time. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked. "Whatever you want," I replied. "You're free to pursue your big plans." She laughed, bitter and broken. "They weren't that big after all, were they?" "No," I agreed. "They weren't." I drove home to my small house with my small dreams to wait for my kids to come home from school. Laura drove away in her BMW, heading toward a one-bedroom apartment on the wrong side of town, where she'd have plenty of time to think about the empire she'd tried to build on someone else's foundation. 6 months later, I'm pushing Emma on the swing set I built in our backyard, the same backyard where Laura and I got married 11 years ago. Jake's practicing soccer shots against the fence, and Sarah's on the deck, grading papers and occasionally looking up to smile at us. Sarah teaches 4th grade at Jake's school. We met at a parent-teacher conference that Laura missed, started talking over coffee, and discovered we wanted the same things: stability, family, Friday night pizza. She thinks my construction stories are interesting. She doesn't mind that I wear the same 3 restaurants on rotation. She fits into our small life like she was always meant to be there. Laura sees the kids every other weekend. She picks them up in a Honda Civic now. The BMW got repossessed 2 months ago. She's working at a small real estate firm across town, the kind that handles rentals and foreclosures, not million-dollar listings. Daniel Whitmore occasionally pops up in the society pages with a new woman on his arm, younger each time. Laura doesn't mention him anymore. Last weekend, when she brought the kids back, she lingered on the porch. "The house looks good," she said. "You painted?" "Same color, just fresher," I replied. She nodded, looking through the window at the life she'd thrown away. Sarah was inside, helping Emma with a school project, and something flickered across Laura's face. Not jealousy exactly, but recognition maybe. "She seems nice," Laura commented. "She is," I agreed. "Does she make you happy?" she asked. "She doesn't make me feel small," I answered. Laura winced, then tried to smile. "I really am sorry, Mark, for all of it." "I know," I said. "Do you think—" She started, then stopped. "Never mind." "What?" I pressed. "Do you think I was always this person? Or did I become her?" she asked. It was the first real question she'd asked in years, the first time she'd shown genuine self-reflection. "I think you were always ambitious," I said carefully. "But somewhere along the way, you confused ambition with entitlement. You started thinking you deserved more instead of working for more." She nodded, tears forming. "I had everything, didn't I? And I threw it away for nothing." "Not nothing. You got your big life, even if it wasn't what you expected," I replied. "It's pretty small," she laughed bitterly. "Most lives are," I said. She left then, driving away in her practical car to her practical apartment, where she'd eat dinner alone and scroll through Instagram, looking at other people's big lives and wondering how she'd ended up so small. Inside, Sarah was making spaghetti. Nothing fancy, just sauce from a jar and garlic bread from the freezer. Jake was setting the table without being asked, and Emma was chattering about her day. It was beautifully, perfectly ordinary. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, kissing my cheek. "Everything's good," I replied. And it was. My small life, with its small ambitions and small dreams, was good. Laura had been right that I'd never be the guy with the Porsche and the penthouse and the expensive watches. But she'd been wrong about that being a failure. Some of us are builders, content to create something solid and lasting. Others are climbers, always reaching for the next rung, never satisfied with the view from where they are. Laura was a climber who'd forgotten that when you're climbing alone, there's no one to catch you when you fall. That night, after the kids were asleep and Sarah was reading in bed, I stood in my workshop, looking at the jewelry box I'd been making for Emma's birthday. It was simple, oak with brass hinges. Nothing that would impress anyone who didn't understand craftsmanship. But it would last. In 50 years, Emma could give it to her daughter, and it would still be solid, still be beautiful in its simplicity. That's what Laura never understood. The things that last are rarely the things that shine brightest. They're the quiet things, the steady things, the things that seem too small to matter until they're gone. She said I was too small for her big plans. Turns out her big plans were too small for the consequences. I turned off the workshop light and went inside to my small, perfect life, leaving Laura's ambitions where they belonged, in the ashes of what we used to be. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.